I was on Route 7, 8 minutes from home, when my phone lit up on the passenger seat. The car had Bluetooth, but I had never bothered to pair the new phone. The phone was face down. The screen reflected white off the dome of the car ceiling. I glanced. I read upside down, Marin, the babysitter. I picked it up at the next red light. Don't come home yet. Keep driving. I read it twice. The light turned green. The car behind me did not honk because there were no other cars on Route 7 on a Wednesday at 9 in the evening in late January in upstate New York. The road was empty. The road was always empty at this hour. I drove through the intersection. I typed with my right thumb at the next stop sign. Everything okay? The reply came before I had fully pulled away. Someone is in the house. I am in the basement. The kids are with me. Don't come home. Please don't come home. I pulled over. The shoulder of Route 7 between the high school and the small bridge over the creek is a gravel strip about 6 feet wide, with a low wooden guardrail and a small drop into a stand of birches. I pulled onto the gravel. I put the car in park. I did not turn off the engine. I did not turn on the hazards. I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and I read the message for the third time. The kids were Felix, who was 7, and Ren, who was 4. Marin was their babysitter. Marin was 22. Marin was a senior at the small state college 11 miles north of our house, where she was studying to be a school counselor. Marin had been with us for 14 months. Marin was the kind of babysitter who put both kids to bed by 7:30, who cleaned the kitchen, who left me a small written note on the counter with the small things that had happened that I might want to know. Marin did not, in 14 months, panic about anything. Marin had handled Ren's croup. Marin had handled the time Felix had cut his foot on a piece of glass in the backyard. Marin had handled, 6 months earlier, the dog from next door coming into our garage and not knowing how to leave. I called her. She picked up on the first ring. She was whispering. She said, "Don't talk loud. I am under the workbench. The kids are in the small crawl space behind me. They are quiet." Felix has his hand over Ren's mouth. Ren thinks it is a game. Felix knows it is not a game. He is doing it anyway. I do not know how long they can stay quiet. I said, "Marin, tell me." She said, "Around 8:40, I heard the front door." I was upstairs in Ren's room. I had just finished reading her a book. She was almost asleep. Felix was already asleep in his own room. I heard the front door open. I assumed it was you. I called down. I said your name. There was no answer. I walked to the top of the stairs. The lights down the stairs were off. They had been on when I went up. Somebody had turned them off. I did not see anybody. I heard a sound from the kitchen. A drawer opening. The drawer where you keep the knives. The one that creaks. I did not say anything else. I went into Felix's room. I picked him up. I went into Ren's room. I picked her up. I went down the back stairs. The back stairs come out in the mudroom. The mudroom has the door to the basement. I went down the basement stairs. I closed the basement door behind us. The basement door does not lock from the inside. I am sorry. I should have thought of that before. We have been down here for about 9 minutes. I called 911 4 minutes ago. They are coming. They told me to stay on the line. I hung up to call you. I am calling them back as soon as I hang up with you. I am sorry I am not on with them right now. I needed you to know. I needed you to not come home. I said, "Marin, stay on the line with them. Do not call me back. I am going to call them too. We are going to be okay. Tell Felix to keep doing what he is doing. Tell Ren she is being so good. I am going to be there as fast as I can without coming inside. I love you. I am going to hang up. Call them back now." She said, "Okay." She hung up. I called 911. The dispatcher answered before the first ring had finished. She said, 911, what is your emergency? I said, "My babysitter just called you from my house in Spruce Lane. There is a man in my house. My 2 children are in the basement with her. I am on Route 7. I am about 8 minutes from the house. I am driving back. I need to know where to go." She said, "Sir, is your last name Halloran?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Sir, Mr. Halloran, listen to me. Your address is on the screen in front of me. We have 3 units en route. They are 7 minutes out. I need you to drive directly to the Sunoco station at the corner of Route 7 and Maple Hill Road. Do you know it?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Drive to the Sunoco. Pull into the lot. Park near the front of the store. Stay in your car. Officer Beck is going to meet you there in approximately 4 minutes. He is going to be in plain clothes. He is going to be in a dark gray Toyota. He is going to identify himself before he approaches your vehicle. Do not get out of your car for anyone other than Officer Beck. Do you understand?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Mr. Halloran, your babysitter is on the line with my colleague right now. She is doing very well. Your children are doing very well. They are being very quiet. The first unit is going to be at your house in 5 minutes. They are going to enter the front door and the back door simultaneously. We have a plan. Do you understand?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Drive. I am staying on with you until you reach the Sunoco. Tell me when you are pulling in." I pulled back onto Route 7. I drove to the Sunoco. The dispatcher did not say much else for the 4 minutes. She told me to slow down once. She told me to use my turn signal at the intersection. She told me when I had pulled into the lot that I was doing well. I parked near the front of the store. A dark gray Toyota pulled in. 2 minutes later, a man got out. He was in his 30s. He had a small flannel jacket over a dark t-shirt. He came up to my window. He held up a small leather wallet that had a badge in it. He did not knock on the window. He stood about 3 feet from the car and waited for me to acknowledge him. I rolled the window down. He said, "Mr. Halloran, I'm Detective Beck. May I sit in the passenger seat with you?" I unlocked the door. He got in. He did not slam the door. He pulled it gently shut. He put on his seatbelt out of what I now think was pure habit. He said, "The units are at your house. The kitchen door and the front door breached simultaneously about 90 seconds ago. The man is in custody. He is the only person in the house besides Marin and your children. Marin and your children are still in the basement. Officer Hutchings is with them. They are coming out shortly. We are going to drive to your house in about 3 minutes. Before we do, I am going to tell you what we know. It is going to be hard to hear, but it is going to be better that you hear it from me in this car than that you hear it for the first time in your own kitchen. Are you ready?" I said, "Yes," he said. "The man in your house is named Cyriac Penberthy. He is 46. He was until 8 months ago an employee of your wife's law firm. He worked as a paralegal. He worked specifically on cases your wife managed. 8 months ago, he was terminated. The termination was not, by your wife's later description to internal HR, dramatic. He had been underperforming. He had been put on a performance plan. He had not improved. He had been let go. He had taken it badly. He had sent your wife a series of emails over the following 2 months that had escalated in tone. He had not, by the firm's assessment, made specific threats. The firm had, however, in February, hired an outside security consultant to do a small review of your wife's exposure. The consultant had made recommendations. Some of them had been implemented. He had not, by every measure available to the firm, been a person of further concern after about April. The emails had stopped. He had moved out of his apartment in the city. The firm had assumed he had moved on with his life. He had not moved on. He had, by what we have already seen in your house, been preparing this evening for somewhere between 4 and 6 months. I said, "My wife." He said, "Your wife is in Chicago. We know. We have her firm on the line. They have made contact with her. She is being escorted to a secure location at her hotel. She is safe, Mr. Halloran. He came to your house tonight because he believed your wife would be home. He had, by the small set of items he brought with him, planned this evening as something that involved her specifically. He had not, by every indication we have, planned for the babysitter or the children to be home alone. He had, in the small careful way these things sometimes go, gotten an outdated piece of information. Your wife's schedule had changed. He did not know. He came anyway. When he found that she was not home, he was, by the time the officers entered, is in a state of, in the technical language we use, paused planning. He was sitting at your kitchen table. He had the knife in front of him. He had not, in the 23 minutes he had been in your house, gone to the base. He had not, in those 23 minutes, gone upstairs. He had been sitting at the table. He had been waiting. He had been trying to decide what to do next. What got there before he decided? I sat in the driver's seat of my own car. I put my hands on the steering wheel and pressed my palms against it until the small joints of my fingers hurt. I said, "Officer," he said, "take your time." I took my time. He sat in the passenger seat. He did not say anything for what was probably 40 seconds. Then I said, "Take me home." We drove to the house. There were 6 cars in front of the house when we pulled up. None of them had lights on. The street was quiet. The neighbors' houses were dark. The whole street looked like it had no idea anything had happened. Detective Beck walked me up the front path. Marin met us in the front hall. She had Felix on one hip. Ren was holding her hand. Marin's face was the face of a person who had been holding it together for 43 minutes and was now, in the small, careful safety of an adult man, walking through her front door, allowing herself to start the slow business of not. Felix saw me. Felix did the thing kids do when they have been brave for a long time and the brave thing is over. He came to me. I picked him up. I picked up Ren too. I had both of them. Marin stepped back. She put her hand on the wall to keep her balance. Detective Beck put his hand on her shoulder, lightly, the way you put a hand on somebody's shoulder when they are about to start crying and you want them to know they are allowed to. She started crying. I held my kids and I watched my babysitter cry, and I did not, for the first time in 43 minutes, know what my body was supposed to do. Officer Hutchings, who had been with them in the basement, was a woman in her 40s. She came out of the kitchen. She said, very quietly, to Marin, "Honey, come sit down." Marin went and sat on the small bench by the front door. I stood in the hallway with Felix on one arm and Ren on the other. Ren said, in a small, clear voice, "Daddy." Marin and I were playing a quiet game. I said, "I know, sweetheart." She said, "I won." I said, "You did. You won the quiet game. You won very, 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 very well." She put her head on my shoulder. She fell asleep about 4 seconds later. Felix did not fall asleep. Felix put his face in the small place between my neck and my collarbone, and he stayed there. He did not say anything. He did not cry. He breathed against my neck. He breathed slowly. He was 7, and he had been the older brother for the entire 43 minutes, and he was, in his small, careful way, still being the older brother. I held them. I do not know for how long. I want to skip ahead. The man was charged with several counts. He took a plea 4 months later. He took the plea because the prosecutor offered him a sentence that did not involve the part of the charging that would have required Felix to testify. The not having Felix testify was, in the small private accounting of our family, the part of the plea that I am most grateful for. Felix is 7. He had been very brave in a basement crawl space for 43 minutes. He did not need to be brave in a courtroom, too. The man is in a state facility. He will be there for the rest of any meaningful version of his life. The plea included terms that prevent him from any contact with my wife, with me, with the kids, or with anyone at my wife's firm, for the entirety of any future release that may someday be theoretically possible. The terms are the terms. My wife came home the next afternoon. She had flown back on the first flight she could get. She had spent the night at the hotel with 2 off-duty officers her firm had hired. She had not slept. She had been on the phone with me for most of the flight, with brief breaks for crying. She had walked in the front door at 3:11 that afternoon. Felix had been in the living room watching a show. He had stood up. He had walked over to her. He had hugged her around the waist. He had said, in the small voice he had been using since the basement, "Mom, why did that man come to our house?" She had not, in the moment, had an answer for him. She had told him she did not know. She had told him she would tell him as much as she could, when he was older. He had accepted the answer. He has asked her periodically, in the 11 months since. She has been telling him more. In the small, careful increments she has decided he is ready for. He has been processing the information at his own pace. He is, by every measure I have been able to take of him, going to be okay. Going to be okay does not mean unchanged. He is changed. He is, in the small specific way only his parents can see, slightly different than he was. He is more careful at the front door. He looks at people's faces longer. He asks me, more often than he used to, where I am going and when I will be back. Ren remembers very little. Ren is 4. Ren has, in 11 months, mentioned in the basement game exactly twice. Both times she has mentioned it as a thing she won. We have not corrected her. The not correcting is, by every account we have been given by the child therapist we briefly took her to, the right approach. She is going to remember it as a quiet game she won with her brother. She is going to keep remembering it that way for as long as her 4-year-old brain holds it. She may in 20 years ask us about it. She may not. Either is fine. Marin came back 2 weeks later. We had not asked her to. We had told her, on the phone, the day after, that we did not expect her to come back, and that we were going to pay her for the rest of the school year, regardless of whether she wanted to keep working for us. We had told her we did not, in any small way, want her to feel obligated. She had called me the following Zitsumide. She had told me she had been thinking about it. She had told me she wanted to come back. She had told me her reasons. The reasons were her own. I am not going to share them in detail. What I will tell you is that they were the reasons of a 22-year-old who had decided, in the small private way only she could, that she did not want her last memory of our house to be a basement crawl space. She had come back on a Wednesday afternoon. She had let herself in with her key. She had been there when Felix had gotten off the school bus. Felix had walked into the kitchen and seen her there, and had stopped. He had looked at her. She had looked at him. She had said in the small, careful voice she had used for 14 months before the night, "Hi, buddy. How was your day?" Felix had said, "Good." He had set his backpack down. He had gone to the snack drawer. He had taken out a granola bar. He had eaten the granola bar standing at the kitchen counter while Marin had asked him about his spelling test. The afternoon had been the afternoon. The afternoon had been the small, careful version of a regular Wednesday. Marin has been with us since. She graduated college in May. She had been planning, before the night, to move to a city about 3 hours away for a master's program. She had been planning to leave us in August. She had, in the small, careful, private way she made the decision, decided not to move. She had told me she had wanted to stay close. She had told me she was going to do the master's program online. She had told me, also, that she did not want me to assume she was staying because of the night. She had told me she was staying because she liked living in our town, and because the master's program had agreed to let her do it online, and because she had a small set of other reasons that were her own. I had not pushed her on the reasons. She is in our kitchen right now. She just got here. It is 4:07 on a Thursday afternoon. The bus is going to drop Felix off at 4:16. Marin is preheating the oven for the small frozen pretzels Felix likes as an after-school snack. Ren is at preschool until 4:30. My wife is driving home from the office. I am working from home today. I am in the small office off the dining room. The kitchen door is closed, but I can hear Marin humming in there. The humming is the small ordinary sound of an afternoon. The afternoon is the afternoon. Detective Beck retired 4 months ago. He sent me a card before he retired. The card had a small handwritten note. The note said he wanted me to know that he had spent 28 years in the department and that the Wednesday night in January had been the cleanest call he had ever been on. He wanted me to know that the cleanness had not been him. The cleanness had been Marin. The cleanness had been Felix. The cleanness had been Ren, keeping her mouth covered for 43 minutes because her brother had asked her to. The cleanness had been every small thing that had gone right in the small, careful sequence between Marin's first text and the officers entering the front door. He wanted me to know that he had been in this job long enough to know that most calls do not go that way, and that he was going to remember that one for the rest of his retirement. I wrote him back. I did not, in the writing, know what to say. I had spent 4 days on the small, careful work of trying to figure out what to say to a man who had sat in my passenger seat at a Sunoco at 9:17 on a Wednesday night and had told me, in level professional language, that my children were alive. What I wrote was short. What I wrote was, Detective Beck. Thank you for the calm in your voice in the car. I do not know what would have happened to me in those 4 minutes without the calm. The calm was the gift. Enjoy your retirement. You earned it. He wrote back 2 weeks later, Mr. Halloran. The calm was practice. 28 years of practice. I am glad I had it ready. Live well. Live well. I have been thinking about those 2 words for the last 7 months. Detective Beck was not, in writing them, trying to give me advice. He was, by my best reading of him as a person, signing off on a card. The 2 words were the small, careful closing of a conversation he had decided to have with me once and was not, by his own measure of his retirement, going to have again. But the 2 words landed in me in a way that has been hard to explain. Live well. I had, for the first 6 months after the night, been living the way you live in the aftermath of a thing. Carefully. With the lights on. With the doors locked. With the small, careful attention to every small thing my children said about how they were feeling. I had been doing the small, ordinary work of being a father who had almost lost his children. I had been doing it adequately. I had been doing it tightly. The 2 words from Beck arrived in my mailbox in a small white envelope, and they did something to me that I have not been able to fully articulate. They suggested, in the small 2-word way that Beck had clearly not meant for them to suggest, that the aftermath was not, by itself, the rest of my life. The aftermath was, by my best understanding of what he meant, a thing I was supposed to step out of, eventually, into the small ordinary practice of living the life that the cleanness had given back to me. The life that the cleanness had given back to me. That phrase is mine. I have not said it to anybody else. I am saying it to you because I do not know how else to describe the small, careful work I have been doing for the last 7 months. The work has been the work of trying to live, not in the aftermath, but in the life that the aftermath had given back to me. The 2 are not the same. The aftermath is a posture of vigilance. The life is the small, ordinary practice of being a father, a husband, a person who works, a person who has friends, a person who plays catch with his son in the backyard on Sunday afternoons, because his son is alive and is 7 and likes playing catch. I have been moving slowly from the aftermath to the life. I am not all the way there. I do not think I am ever going to be all the way there. But the small, careful movement in the small, careful direction is the project of the rest of my time. Felix is going to be off the bus in 3 minutes. I can hear Marin in the kitchen. She is taking the pretzels out of the package. She is setting up the baking sheet. She is humming a song I do not recognize. She is 22 years old, and she is in my kitchen, and she is humming, and she has been my babysitter for 2 years and 3 weeks now. The bus stops in front of the house. The brakes squeak. They have always squeaked. The brakes are a small, unchanging fact of our life on Spruce Lane. The bus door opens. I hear Felix's voice say bye to the driver. I hear his footsteps on the front walk. The front door opens. Felix says, Marin, she says from the kitchen, I am in here, buddy. He goes to the kitchen. I close my laptop. I get up. I walk down the hall to join them. The afternoon is the afternoon.